I am here. Been one of those days. Glad to have you. Whether you're listening to the show on air, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, which is the only way, other than me listening myself during this time slot, the only way I listen to this fine radio station is through the Extra Sports 1300 app. Sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you. I have multiple guests. Coincidentally, they're both named Jay. Jay Ritchie, host of Tee to Green Radio, will join me. Just how diabolical has the USGA gotten with this Oakmont setup? We'll talk about that. How about a U.S. Open draft for some U.S. Senior Open tickets? We'll do that. And then Jay Paterno, the last name should sound very familiar to you. He will join me to discuss what to expect moving forward in college athletics now that the House settlement has been passed. The rest of the time, it's you and me, 719-247-1313. You could call or text in your thoughts. You can also hit me up on X at Gingerly Tweets if you are so inclined. Let's start with some hockey. Tomorrow is Game 4 between the Panthers and the Oilers, but I'm talking about awards season continuing, and finally the Avalanche get on the board. I mean, they weren't even up for a lot of the awards, surprisingly. Jared Bednar not up for Coach of the Year, Nathan McKinnon not up for MVP, and Chris McFarland, despite completely remaking his roster in one season, not up for GM of the Year. But Cale Makar was up for the Norris Trophy, as he always is, and he won it. And it's funny, I thought I knew this, but when the tweet went out and it said second, I don't know if you had this reaction. I was like, he only has 2? This is the case. This is his second Norris Trophy. I mean, we're not approaching Susan Lucci territory here with Cale Makar, but you look at the run he has had in a relatively short amount of time in the NHL. So he won the Rookie of the Year. Then he was a finalist for the Norris Trophy. Then he was a finalist for the Norris Trophy. Then he was a finalist for the Norris Trophy. And then 2 more years after that. He's been the only year he hasn't been one of the 3 finalists for the best defenseman in the NHL was his rookie season. His true rookie season, where he won the Calder Trophy for Rookie of the Year. Every other year, he has been up for the highest honor bestowed upon a defenseman. So that's why it feels like when you have a run like that and you only get 2, it's a little weird. Won it by a much greater margin than he did his first. He got 176 first place votes. The next closest player in terms of first place votes was Zach Werenski of Columbus with 13. It's a 176-13 win for Cale Makar. And you know where I stand on this. Just vote like we do in our elections. Like, who's the best defenseman? Boom. Because then we get into, like, people are complaining that Cale Makar got 2 third-place votes. It's like, you know what would fix that? If there was no such thing as third-place votes. You had a ballot, and it was every defenseman in the league, and you just picked who you wanted. I mean, let's be honest. You'd be looking for only 3 or 4 guys every year. Maybe I got to think more about that and how that actually, because how did they put every defenseman on the ballot? Well, I'm just saying, like, this stuff about third place votes and second place votes, first place votes even, just did you win? are you the Norris Trophy winner? And I say that with no bit of homerism in me, because actually, if the way I want to do the voting would be done, this would only be Cale Makar's first Norris Trophy. Because the year that he beat out Roman Josi in 2022, Roman Josi actually had more first place votes. So this is not a homer take. Now, the idea that Cale Makar would only have his first Norris Trophy this year is borderline comical. But that's not about the voting. That's separate from what I'm talking about. The fact that Cale Makar has only been acknowledged as the best defenseman in the league twice in this career that he's had is borderline comical. It really is. Because unequivocally, he is the best at what he does. I think you look at like Bobby Orr, for instance. I was talking about this with someone earlier today. It's a much different time. I think one, and this is a credit to Bobby Orr, he was so unlike anybody in the NHL at the time. He was just such a unicorn that the voters, they didn't have any choice. It was like nobody is doing it like Bobby Orr is doing it in terms of playing the defenseman position. So he gets 8. Cale Makar, while he is the gold standard for NHL defensemen these days, he is not as unique for today's NHL as Bobby Orr was for his NHL. Because if you look at the group that routinely gets put up for the Norris Trophy, Adam Fox has fallen off a little bit, but he's won one. That was the year that is kind of a sore subject for Avs fans, because I think Cale Makar probably should have won it that year. But you have Fox, you have Roman Josi, now you have Quinn Hughes, even Evan Bouchard in the Stanley Cup final right now. Buffalo's got 2 of these guys in Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power. Like, the job description to be a defenseman in today's NHL is very different. Everyone is required to be like Bobby Orr. Not everybody is Bobby Orr, of course. But to have much more to your game than just defense. And the Avalanche are actually a perfect example of this, because you have a more traditional defenseman in Devon Taves. And he's more different than everybody else at his position than Cale Makar is. Again, Cale Makar is head and shoulders, I think, above everyone else. But the way he plays the game, the offensive angle to that defenseman position, he's one of a large and ever-growing group. The number 1 pick in this year's draft is Matthew Schaefer is his name. He's probably going to be the number 1 pick. He's a offensively skilled, puck-moving, fast, goal-scoring defenseman. So the way Cale Makar plays the game is very much like Bobby Orr. And I've said Cale Makar is the closest thing that we've gotten to Bobby Orr since Bobby Orr. But there are other super talented, offensive-minded defensemen in the league. And now the Norris Trophy so much just becomes like the Art Ross. Which defenseman has the most points? That guy's going to get it. So I think, one, that Cale Makar is not as unique for his position as some of the defensemen that racked up Norris trophies in the past were, is one aspect. And two, and this, we've talked about this a lot in the NBA, but it exists everywhere. Every sport, every award suffers from voter fatigue. We are going to look back 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and go, how did LeBron only win that many MVPs? How did Tom Brady only win that many MVPs? How did Nikola Jokic only win that many MVPs? How did Cale Makar only win that many? Because he's falling off the pace rapidly of getting to 9 to pass Bobby Orr. But he's been a finalist every single year. But we do this where we want to, it's this guy's turn. Now it's this guy's turn. Let's make sure that everyone gets acknowledged. And I think it comes from the fact that we're so inundated with everything. We grow tired. That's where the voter fatigue comes in. Right? When somebody like a Cale Makar has an amazing season, you see a ton of games on ESPN or TNT. You scroll through your timeline and it's Cale Makar highlights. If you consume hockey talk, Cale Makar is talked about a lot. We tend to run these guys into the ground. We talk so much about them, the 24-hour news cycle, and this whole industry of sports talk makes the public and even people within that world a little bit tired of this guy, whether it's LeBron or Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, or in this case, Cale Makar. Can't give it to him every year. Well, you can, you just don't want to. But there's no debate here. And even though Cale Makar is not as unique for today's NHL as maybe a Bobby Orr was back in his day, the guy's been a finalist every year since his rookie year. He's won it twice. He's been a runner-up and probably should have won a third time. Nobody else in the NHL, as many talented defensemen as we have, nobody right now in the NHL is matching what Cale Makar has been doing. So it looks like maybe he won't catch Bobby Orr. Maybe he won't even catch a Nicholas Lindstrom, who has 7 Norris trophies. But today is just another reminder that there are other guys like Quinn Hughes and Roman Josi that pop up and have really good years. And we can debate whether they ultimately deserve the Norris Trophy or not, but they pop up every year. The one constant has been Cale Makar for 5 years. 5 years in a row, Cale Makar has been an auto bid into the 3 finalists for the Norris Trophy. Nobody else has that track record. So when ultimately we have the big debate of whether Cale Makar is the greatest to ever do it, inevitably, it seems, we're going to be saying Well, he fell 3 Norris trophies short of Bobby Orr. Just doesn't seem like he's going to be able to get to 9. With one more, he's in Paul Coffey and Chris Chelios territory. And that's just in Norris trophies. The only 2 players in the history of hockey that have more points through the same number of games that Cale Makar has played, Bobby Orr, Paul Coffey. That's it. So he's going to be in these conversations, whether he gets to 7, 8, 9 Norris trophies or not. He's going to be in the conversation because the points, the trophies, hopefully the Stanley Cups. Hopefully he's not done winning any of these trophies. But as far as right now, he's the standard. Other guys may pop up from time to time, but the constant is Cale Makar. And again, I go back to the idea that this is just his second is a bit laughable to me. Because it has been a while since we've said anybody else is the best defenseman in the league, not named Cale Makar. It's been Cale Makar. But it's nice to have the trophy every once in a while to remind people. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Cale's latest piece of hardware. Coming up next, let's get into the Broncos a little bit. Sean Payton with some things to say when it comes to J.K. Dobbins. When one thing that you better not be doing here in the month of June. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. So yesterday when the news broke of the Broncos signing J.K. Dobbins, Sean Payton did not want to go into it because it was just a report at that point. So today he stepped to the podium after mandatory minicamp day 2 and didn't really have that much more to say. He reiterated what he said last week when J.K. Dobbins was in for a visit, that, we're in the business of finding good football players. Talked about, it was almost like he was annoyed. Like he was annoyed that people would ask the question about J.K. Dobbins. Any questions? You just expect at this time of year on June 11th, when there's hardly any football news going on, and you end up signing a notable free agent that people aren't going to ask you about it, but he almost seemed like put off by the whole thing. And I think I know the reason why. I know why he didn't want to face a line of questioning in regards to J.K. Dobbins, because he knew inevitably it was going to lead to here.
No, don't start counting. I've heard you guys counting, and it's like, don't count, because half you'll be wrong. Let's just see what they do.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking forward to see how they play, and they're going to get opportunities. I said it earlier, much earlier. I said, look, Audrick's going to get opportunities. All right, we've seen Jaleel, but don't try to figure out the club right now. It's way too early. You can go ahead and try, but
he knows better than that. Right? We're going to do it. I'm sorry. Until the Broncos actually hit the field and we're talking about games, we're going to do stuff like this. But I think that's why he didn't want to, get too in depth on all the strengths that J.K. Dobbins, everything he brings to the table, because he doesn't want it. He doesn't want to get into the thing we used to have to deal with all the time, and he dealt with it a little bit. And when he arrived in Denver, the quarterback questions. Now, there wasn't a quarterback competition, but he knows. He knows how all of this goes. He was on the other side of it. You don't think he showed up on Colin Cowherd's show talking about who's going to make an impact in the upcoming season when he was on in June? Of course he was. But as a coach, it's funny. You turn that part of your brain off, and now you get upset that people are caring about your football team and wanting to make grand proclamations in June about what your team is going to do. But I get it. That's the two sides of it, right? The two sides of the aisle. But what this provides is the methadone for the withdrawals from quarterback competitions that we have in Colorado. All right, we spent so long. We even had it in the Super Bowl years. So we even go back then, because it was when Peyton Manning comes back, is he going to supplant Brock Osweiler? We've had a quarterback competition from the Super Bowl year up until Russell Wilson got here. And then while it wasn't a competition, the 2 years that Russ was here, there were plenty of questions about whether he was the right guy, right? Should they bench him? So we had kind of that thing, that a similar dynamic. It wasn't an out-and-out competition, but we had these questions about whether Russell Wilson was best equipped to lead the Denver Broncos. And that's fine. A fine alternative to a quarterback competition. But now they're really aren't a whole lot of negatives you can bring up about Bo Nix at this point. There is no competition. So the first moment that we have another skill position that looks a little unsettled and there is a known name being put into the mix, especially at this juncture. Oh, this scratches us right where we itch. And we're going to count reps, and you're going to see people who are attending Broncos camp tweeting out things like J.K. Dobbins looked great today. Today was a bounce back day for Audric Estime. Jaleel McLaughlin got most of the work with the ones. This is what we're going to do this summer. Because most everything else about the Denver Broncos is settled. No coach questions, no quarterback questions. Defense doesn't have any holes in it to pick apart. Offensive line's good. Wide receiving core, I guess, is a little bit of that. But I think you have a clear number one in Cortland Sutton. You have a clear, you want to call him the second wide receiver. You have another guy in Marvin Mims that has proven himself to be better than the rest of the pack. Not Sutton, but better than Franklin, Vele, etc. So there are roles within the wide receiver room that are already spoken for. No one's going to get more targets in that room than Cortland Sutton. We know that already. But we don't know who's going to get the bulk of the carries when it comes to the Broncos running backs. So we'll count, we'll opine, we'll make snap judgments. It's what we do this time of year. One thing we will not do, though, I promise you, I will not, I can't speak for everyone else. I will not create the same graphics that they are making in Cleveland to chart how their four quarterbacks are throwing the football. I promise you that. But this running back room has become the new quarterback room in Denver. And it was already going to be that way. And then Sean Payton voluntarily, nobody told him he had to sign J.K. Dobbins. He did it on his own and added even more intrigue to that room. It's a good football player. And the Broncos are in the business of adding good football players. That's Sean Payton's take on the whole thing. Take yours at 719-247-1313. Coming up next, if you have seen some of the videos coming out of Oakmont and some of the conversation from the world's best golfers, boy, are we in for quite the weekend. Jay Ritchie, Tee to Green Radio will join me to discuss and preview the U.S. Open and your chance to compete for tickets to the U.S. Senior Open. I'll explain how next on Extra Sports 1300. The 45th U.S. Senior Open returns to the Broadmoor June 26th through the 29th. You can get your tickets to see some of the legends of the game of golf compete on, and I keep saying this, completely unbiased opinion, one of the best courses on planet Earth. Get your tickets, ussenioropen.com. Joining me now is Jay Ritchie, host of Tee to Green Radio, to talk a little bit about the other U.S. Open, which begins tomorrow at Oakmont. Jay, pleasure to have you. How are you?
I'm doing great, Ryan. Good to be with you. The commissioner, a.k.a. Ryan Kaufman, he got that nickname a month ago when we played Broadmoor East on Media Day for the Senior Open.
Wait a minute. Did I miss something? When did I get a nickname? I don't remember this.
Oh, you don't remember that? Well,
no.
Let's put it this way. We weren't exactly, tearing up the place, Broadmoor East. Well,
no.
We might have been tearing it up in another way, but so we bent the rules a little bit. Would you say? Would you agree with that?
No, I don't. I have no idea what you're talking about. We played by the rules.
Well, if we'd have played by the rules, we'd still be out there. So if somebody was in the knee-high grass or had an unplayable lie or in a bunker, usually somebody spoke up and said, just move it out of there, kick it out of there, and throw it out of there. Ryan did that probably more than anybody. So we decided he was the commissioner, the new commissioner of golf.
Works for me. What does it pay? That's my question.
Maybe we get to go back. That's the thing.
We need to do that. We need to do that very soon. I guess you and I will be out there in a couple of weeks in a different capacity, but we need to get back out there and get another shot at that beast of a course. Speaking of which, or I should say this, just for the listeners. So for the U.S. Senior Open, I have a pair of tickets to the practice on Wednesday. So if you would like to compete in a way for those, we'll do a U.S. Open draft. So you can text in 719-247-1313. Text which golfer you think is going to win the U.S. Open this weekend, and whoever's golfer comes out on top will get a pair of tickets to go out on Wednesday to the U.S. Senior Open. So fire away with those, and we'll keep you updated as Jay and I chatted up a little bit. What would you do with a 289-yard par 3, Jay?
Let's see. I'd probably hit a 150-yard drive, 125-yard second shot, and then a wedge to the green, and then 3 putts. So, that you know what? That is going to be interesting. That's there's just about everybody in the Open will be able to drive the green or get close enough to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a really pivotal hole.
But what does the ball do when you drive it, Jay? Like I'm thinking about, you bring your driver up and you can drive the green if you're these guys, and you're hitting it with such velocity and such power. The way that those greens have played in the practice rounds, and we'll talk about that more in depth, but it's going to bounce off the green and hit somebody.
How do you stop it?
Yeah. That's going to be fascinating. Have you seen anybody talk about specifically that hole and how they are going to handle that? I mean, I don't even know, 289-yard par 3 is a beast enough, but with that added difficulty, I don't know how these guys are going to play it.
Yeah, I have not heard anybody specifically, but today, the last day of practice, yesterday, Monday, I'm sure they're figuring things out.
Yeah,
they'll have them more figured out after after tomorrow and after Friday, getting ready for the weekend.
Hearing this phrase tossed around a lot, would you agree, as connected to the golf world as you are, that Oakmont is the most difficult golf course on planet Earth?
It just might be. That was going to be one of the points I wanted to mention in our little chat today, just how tough it is. I was out there, not in 2016, but I think it was 2006, maybe the last time before that, and walked the course numerous times. And just, I've never seen a golf course like that anywhere, anytime, any place.
What struck you the most about it?
Well, it's a traditional, very old school course, and it's different than most. There's a few out there. Winged Foot comes to mind, but there's not too many of these really old school courses. Most of the old school courses have gone the way of the dinosaur because golfers hit it too far anymore, and they don't play them that much anymore. But not Oakmont. Oakmont is still very old school, very difficult, and a million different ways you can get in trouble.
What do you think is going to be the biggest pain point for these golfers? You mentioned all the different ways. There are a lot of different ways that you can get into trouble. What is the one that you think is going to catch a lot of golfers this week?
Well, as usual, it's an open, so you got to keep it in the fairway. If you don't, we got a taste of what U.S. Open rough is like at the Broadmoor a month ago.
Yeah,
and you can't advance it. You can't hit it out of there. You have to hit it sideways back on the fairway in order to really advance it. Now, they're pros; they advance it better than you and I did. But still, if you're at that level playing U.S. Open golf, and you normally can advance a ball out of the rough 250, but you can only advance it 200. You're going to be penalized. So if you're keeping it in the fairway is one thing. And then, of course, the greens. You got to, like at any Open or at any major championship or any big-time golf course, you got to keep it below the hole.
Jay Ritchie, host of Tee to Green Radio, joining me here on Drive Time Sports. Got our first couple of draft picks in. No surprise, the two top betting favorites from the 303. First pick, Scotty Scheffler, of course. And our second pick is DeChambeau, which is funny because I would think that I would just be inundated with Scotty Scheffler texts. But no, one's Scheffler and one DeChambeau. So easy enough. You could text in which golfer you want to take for this weekend. If your golfer finishes the highest, we won't say they have to win, but whoever's finishes the highest will get 2 tickets to go out Wednesday of the U.S. Senior Open and go out to the Broadmoor and see these golfers get ready. Kind of what today has been for the PGA and LIV golfers. You'll get to go and see them trying to play with the course a little bit, try and figure some things out. So it'll be an interesting day on Wednesday out there at the Broadmoor.
Wednesday's a good day as far as the practice.
Yeah, certainly. So keep them coming, golfer, and your name if you don't mind. Then I don't have to track you down on that. So the other hole I wanted to ask you about was the approach on one. I saw Tony Finau putting from it must have been from 7,500 yards, just putting up that number one at Oakmont. Is that along with that 289 yard par 3 going to be one of the more interesting holes throughout the weekend?
Yeah, I think so too, and it just depends on the individual golfer. If they feel more comfortable putting, because it's basically an extension of the green. If they feel more comfortable putting, then I say go for it. Some guys would be more comfortable just chipping it up or pitching it up there, but yeah, I think it's cool that they have that option.
Yeah, I think it is too, and I think that I would definitely. Not that I would have any greater success, but I would feel more comfortable with putting it rather than trying to get some air on it and stick it on the green, which, as we discussed, is going to be a little bit of an issue as the weekend goes on. Let me ask you, Jay, the big question, which is, does the USGA sometimes go too far in making these golf courses as difficult as they are? I heard Rory the other day say the greens were at 15 and a half or something like that. Is there a line that the USGA can go past, in your opinion?
Yes, and I think they do that. If you asked me this 5 years ago, it would be definitely 1,000% yes. I think they've backed off a little bit on that in the last few years due to criticism. And the old story is, years ago someone said, why would you want to embarrass the best players in the world? And the reply was, we're not trying to embarrass them, we're trying to identify them, which is a great answer. And the USGA stood by that for years and years and years. But I think they've softened a little bit. They've reacted to some of that criticism, and they still cross the line occasionally. But the thing is, we don't know if they've crossed the line until the actual tournament begins and we see what's happening. And then, if you asked me this on Saturday or Sunday, I might say, yeah, they really blew it on 12, or they blew it on 7 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think perhaps the reason, and you can correct me on this, that they ended up, backing off a little bit is it is a made for television product, right? And it is entertainment. And if your customers are saying, hey, I don't like watching my favorite golfer, finish 18 over par, or whatever it is, there will probably be some golfers that will finish better than that. But the idea, I'm tuning in. So it's a balance, but they certainly set themselves apart because none of the other majors are, we don't even really talk about as in-depth a breakdown of the course and how it's playing with some of these other, even when the Open Championship rotates, we don't get into that kind of conversation. The course is as much a character in this story as the golfers are.
100%. Yeah, I agree with that. In the Masters, the same course every year.
Mm-hmm.
The tradition, you got the tradition. You can only do so much with the course. The PGA Championship, I think they don't mind seeing scores of 18 under, 20 under. It's just a Wild West shootout. Whoever can come out on top, okay. And it's great for the fans, too. You can be 10 back going into the last round and still have a chance. Maybe that's a little exaggeration, but you get what I mean. And then the British, that's basically, you're talking old school courses, and the weather comes into play in that major.
Right.
But the Open is kind of by itself in the fact par is a good score.
Yeah. So let me ask you about the participants here. Anything about this weekend, would it back you off of saying that you would pick Scotty Scheffler? Are we at that point now where it's, yes, of course him, but let's get into some other people? Or is there something about this course or this tournament that you feel like, well, maybe Scheffler's not as much of a sure thing as people may believe him to be?
I have not been a big Scotty Scheffler bandwagon guy.
Mm-hmm.
Up until just maybe this year. And now it's Scotty Scheffler's world, and the rest of the PGA Tour is living in it. Yeah, I'm convinced. Now, that's not to say he's going to win, but still, it's pretty doggone hard to pick against him.
How much do you think, because I've heard Tiger's name being thrown around in comparing what Scotty Scheffler is doing right now. But then I also, a couple weeks ago, hear Jack Nicklaus talking, and we forget this because they all come together for the majors, how much the Live PGA thing is hurting the other tournaments on the tour. I mean, is that a fair thing to bring up when people start throwing around the name of Eldrick Woods to say, Scheffler is doing this, but look they're not golfing in Saudi Arabia, but is Bryson there every weekend? Is this guy there every weekend? I mean, is that a fair thing to at least bring up? Not to disqualify what he's doing, but I mean, I tense up a little bit when somebody starts mentioning that what they're doing is Tiger-esque.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. And I've been saying that for the past couple of years. I even said it with Tiger because I don't think the competition Tiger faced in his prime was anywhere near what Jack faced in his not only prime, but Jack played at a very high level for 15, almost 20 years. I mean,
yeah, you and I last summer we had this conversation when we were talking about Tiger versus Jack. So the way you are with Jack, apparently I am with Tiger now. Very protective.
Yeah. And to some extent, that's one of the reasons why I wasn't big on the Scotty Scheffler bandwagon. Because I looked around and went, well, who's he playing against? All of them, not all, but a lot of his main competition is over playing live golf now.
Well, what changed for you, Jay? Why are you on him now? Because of the majors?
Because of the majors, and because when he wins, he just walks away with it.
Yeah.
He just finds another gear, and you're thinking, okay, this is going to really be a good shootout here. So it's Scheffler and 4 or 5 other guys are either tied or within two shots of one another, and Scotty ends up winning by 6 or 8, and it's like, wow, yeah, he just finds that other gear that nobody else does right now.
Yeah, he's unreal. And if he or any golfer, like, if we come away at Sunday night saying Scheffler or anybody kind of tamed Oakmont, I mean, that's going to be right up there with some of the great performances. If we can say that about somebody when Sunday is up, because usually we just say so-and-so survived some of these U.S. Open courses.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
that's a great point. Yeah.
If not Scotty, who are you feeling this week?
Okay, well, I think you got to look at Bryson, defending champ, by the way, and I think was it Curtis Strange, the last guy to win back-to-back U.S. Open, so that isn't done very often. And I don't know necessarily that Oakmont fits DeChambeau's game, or vice versa. Last year he won at Pinehurst, and Pinehurst is tough in its own way than Oakmont is in its way. And so I don't know if DeChambeau's game is going to translate to Oakmont, but I think you got to look at him. Some of the other guys, some of the usual suspects. You got Xander Schauffele, you got the John Rahms. You got guys that have been hot recently. Ben Griffin, Sepp Straka.
Sepp Straka is 35-1. Yeah, better than Justin Thomas, better than Cantlay. Yeah.
He's had a good year. And Shane Lowry, another guy, dark horse. He's had a really solid season so far. Played well at the Memorial. Now the Memorial's another tough course, and that was just 2 weeks ago when they played in Jack's backyard. So I think guys who played well at the Memorial tend to play well a couple of weeks later at the Open, no matter where it's at. Shane Lowry, who, by the way, in 2016 was 6 over on the last day and finished 3 or 4 shots out of the lead. So he can play Oakmont.
It will be must-watch television for sure, and we'll see who can tame the beast. That is Oakmont, and you'll hear Jay on Sunday morning at 8 talking about all of it on Tee to Green Radio. Jay, appreciate the time, and we'll probably talk between now and in the U.S. Senior Open, but I'm looking forward to hanging out with you here in a couple weeks there at the Broadmoor.
Yeah, that'll be fun. We got Russ Miller joining us this Sunday
from
the Broadmoor. And Chris DeMarco, who was a qualifier here yesterday and survived a playoff to get into the tournament to get into the Senior Open
At the Country Club of Colorado?
Yeah, Country Club
Nice.
of Colorado. I went down there and found him after his round and after the playoff, and we had a nice little chat. We'll play some of that this week for you as well.
Awesome. Check it out on Sunday, and then we'll be running updates on the U.S. Open all starting tomorrow, all weekend, courtesy of our friends at Westwood One. So we've got it all covered for you this weekend from Oakmont. Jay, appreciate the time. We'll talk soon, buddy.
Thanks, Commissioner Kaufman.
That's not going to stick. Jay Ritchie, host of Tee to Green Radio, joining me here on Drive Time Sports. That entire day, and I had not been drinking heavily. That entire day is a blur. Like Jay said, I don't remember being a stickler on that. I think he's giving me a hard time. That's what I think. We got another pick in. John Rahm goes to Steven. So if you want a chance to win a pair of tickets to go to the U.S. Senior Open on Wednesday of that week, just text the golfer that you think will win the U.S. Open and your name to 719-247-1313. 3 picks off the board: Scheffler, DeChambeau, and Rahm. And not surprisingly, those are the 3 betting favorites in order. Scheffler plus 275, Bryson plus 750, and John Rahm at 12-1. What do you want to bet? The next text that comes in says Rory. Coming up next, Sean Payton on the thing the Broncos need to do to be an elite football team and what has been keeping them from it the last couple of years. Welcome in. Glad to have you. Appreciate you watching the show on a daily basis via our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300. Every view counts. So thank you for that. Invite you to be a bigger part of the show than just watching or listening. You can text or call into the show at 719 24/7 1313. We have our U.S. Open draft going on right now. You take the golfer that you think will win, or the most likely golfer out of who is left, and whoever's golfer finishes the highest will get a couple of tickets to the Wednesday practice round at the Broadmoor for the U.S. Senior Open. So we have Scheffler, DeChambeau, Rahm, and now Albert has Xander Schauffele. So there's that. Speaking of the U.S. Senior Open, all next week I will be giving away tickets as well for the event. So stay listening for all of that. Jay Paterno, son of Joe Pa, will join me at the bottom of the hour to discuss. He's been a college football coach for nearly 20 years. He's touched every part of college athletics throughout his career, Jay Paterno has. So he is uniquely qualified to discuss what is going to happen moving forward. So he will join me coming up at the bottom of the hour. But for right now, the talk around Broncos mandatory minicamp is this team's pretty good. And some people are putting their expectations quite high for this football team on the upcoming season. And Sean Payton says high expectations never hurt anyone.
I think they have a high standard of how they see themselves and where we can be.
So a good self-awareness with this group that
I think so. I think so. Now, a little bit of confidence always helps, and you get going, you win some games. Any team really that's been worth their salt has always put a string of wins together. We need to start faster. The last 2 years we haven't, but I like where we're at right now.
The streaks have been a topic of conversation with Sean Payton since he arrived. And obviously the Denver Broncos teams before he arrived, did not do a great job of stringing wins together. And to his credit and to the Broncos' credit, even when he first got to Denver in 2023, remember they were on a 5-game winning streak. So immediately put that in place as something that had to get done if the Broncos were going to be serious about contending for the playoffs. That's what got them into the conversation, that 5-game winning streak, and then it kind of falls off from there. But that team was not as good as last year's, or certainly this year's. Last year, it felt a little bit more real, didn't it? When the Broncos started to string together wins, it didn't feel like this team was just like lucking into it. If you remember 2 years ago with the Broncos win streak, right? They went up against like not J.K. Dobbins, Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs was the quarterback of Minnesota at one point. They had the Buffalo Bills with too many men on the field. Like it was a set of circumstances that you just came away from that 5-game winning streak like they're not this good. They're not. I mean, it could be fun if you're a Broncos fan, but the realization had to be there the whole time that this was a little bit of fool's gold. Last year, there weren't as many caveats to the wins they were picking up. They were looking really good in some of their wins. It felt more legitimate. The two separate win streaks that they had. They had a 3-game winning streak at one point and then a 4-game winning streak at another point. So that's something that the Broncos are going to have to do again if they are going to get to the postseason. What is the thing that keeps it from continuing, though, is what's interesting to me. So in 2023, the Broncos went on the 5-game winning streak, and everyone looks at the New England game as what did them in, and that's right to an extent, but the 5-game winning streak ended with a 22-17 loss to Houston, a 1-score loss against Houston, and then New England and all that kind of stuff. Last year, they had the 2 winning streaks, one of 3 games, one of 4 games, both snapped coincidentally by the LA Chargers and by 7 points in each game, which leads into another big key for the Denver Broncos this upcoming season. They have got to win more close games than they did last year. 1-6 in games decided by 7 points or less. 1-6. You look at some of the elite teams in the NFL last year. Kansas City was 11-0 in such games. Minnesota was 8-1. Philadelphia was 7-2. Detroit was 6-2. Buffalo was 5-2. That's where the Broncos have to get. There's going to be an evening out, and it's one of those things that's two things at once. It is skill, but it is also a little bit of luck, because for some of those teams you watch, whether it's Kansas City, Minnesota, Philadelphia, Detroit, or Buffalo, just to name a few, one of those teams will not have nearly the success in 1-score games that they did last year. And the easy one to look at would be Kansas City, because 11-0 is preposterous. That's ridiculous. Nobody wins 11 1-score games. Minnesota could be another one. They're probably the one I would bank on the most, just because now they're starting essentially a rookie quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. And 8-1's a pretty bonkers record in 1-score games. So some of this 1-6, I don't expect the Broncos to be 1-6 in 1-score games. They're going to be a little bit better than they were last year, because there's some of that it just kind of ebbs and flows. And one year you're getting the better end of that, and the next year you're not. But some of it is skill. Some of it is coaching, and it's been something that Sean Payton has stressed, right? The winning in the margins. That's why he got so angry at his special teams coordinator and fired him. Because they felt like they had one on they were in position to beat Kansas City, probably the most notable 1-score game last year that didn't go their way. They were in position to win that. And because they weren't the team that was as coached up as their opponent, because the Chiefs identified a weakness in the Broncos' protection on field goals and extra points, and they exploited it. They overloaded that side, and they ended up blocking. So the Broncos were not the better coached team. The Broncos were not the more prepared team. They weren't the team that won on the margins that day, and that drives Sean Payton absolutely crazy. Enter a new special teams coordinator, some new personnel, and I would be very surprised if we see a Broncos kick get blocked this year. But Sean Payton knows what it takes to win in the league. That most NFL games are 1-score games. They are close. They have either end up being 1-score games, or for the vast majority of it, the two teams are within a score. So those are the games that you have to make your hay in. You have to come out on the right end of those more often than not to give yourself a real good chance to get something other than the 7th seed in a conference. Like if we're talking Broncos threatening Kansas City for the AFC West title, they're going to have to do much better than 1-6 in one-score games. But I was looking a little bit more at those games to just see if there was a common thread. And the common thread really is lack of execution on the last drive or two of the game. Like it really is what you would expect. Right? If it's a one-score game, you're thinking in your head that the Broncos at some point had the ball with the chance to win the game and could not come through. You look, Kansas City, the blocked field goal. Seattle, they had Bo Nix threw an interception on the second to last drive. Pittsburgh, there was an incomplete pass on 3rd and 5 where Bo Nix was going to Cortland Sutton. They were in the red zone, and they threw the incomplete pass on the second to last drive. Cincinnati, they failed to convert that 3rd and 8 to keep their drive alive with the chance to win after Cincinnati had missed a field goal themselves. Obviously, Joe Burrow, not going to miss twice, takes them down the field and scores. The Jets, the one game they were on the right side of a one-score game, even in that game, the Broncos missed a field goal. Even in the one game that the Broncos won by one score, you could say that the execution in one-score games was poor. The Broncos missed the field goal first. And the Jets have a chance to win the game, and albeit difficult field goal try given the conditions and the distance, but the Jets missed it, and the Broncos escaped. And then the two Chargers games, and this is what sent me down a different path. So the Charger games finished as one-score games. If you recall, they really weren't one-score games in the truest sense. They ended there. But the Broncos in both of those games took field goals because they were down by 10. In both games, they chose to kick the field goal, get the points, and then try to onside kick and get it back to score the touchdown. So really, the Chargers were more in control of those two games than the final score would indicate. So then I started to look at these other games, and I realized that in true one-score games, because even Seattle only became a one-score game because Bo Nix had the last-minute drive. It was a cosmetic touchdown. There was no way they were going to win that game. Really, the Broncos in true one-score games, I have the ball late with the chance to win the game, or the other team is driving down the field with the chance to win the game. They only played in 4 of those games last year. 4 such games. Still, only 1-3. So the point still remains that they have to be better in one-score games, but I just found it interesting looking back and saying, wait a minute. The Seattle game and the 2 Charger games, those weren't really one-score games. And that would lead to the idea that the Broncos got to get in more one-score games. The games that they lost, remember, they were blown out in a lot of their losses. In a few of their losses, I should say, not a lot. But Broncos certainly plan on being within one score in all of these games, and they hope that their luck will change. But as Dwight Schrute would say, Billy Zane says on Titanic, real man makes his own luck. You look at some of these games, late game execution, specifically by the Broncos offense led by Bo Nix, kept them from winning those games. Having gone through it for a whole year, is Bo Nix going to be better in those kind of situations? That's one of the big areas of growth that Bo Nix can show this year. Game-winning drives. 719-24-7, 1313. We'll stick with the Broncos coming up next, because part of the reason why expectations are so high with this Broncos team is because their defense looks really good. Like in some people's minds, rivaling the Super Bowl team good. You'll hear how good Sean Payton thinks it is, and a key member of that defense is due a big payday. What's the holdup? Treat your dad to a $5,000 basement, barbecue, backyard upgrade, or whatever is on his list. Pop gets to pick. Head to extrasports1300.com to enter this national contest for a chance at $5,000 for your top pop. Sponsored locally by Bullseye Plumbing, Heating, and Air. You've scored a bullseye, the best you can get. So now that J.K. Dobbins has signed, and that was a little piece of business that kind of popped up, and now it's been taken care of. Now the next item on the agenda, I would think, for the Denver Broncos is Nick Bonitto, as he is set to get his extension. He can sign, well, he can get an extension later, but what's the holdup? Sean Payton was kind of asked that question and did a little bit of a duck, dodge, or dive when asked about what any hesitancy that they may have when it comes to signing Nick Bonitto a contract. Basically, what's the holdup?
Listen, he's playing at a high level. We have to be careful of his snap count. If you went back and did any homework and you saw, man, he's at a pitch count that's borderline too high. And we got to be smart about that.
Is this a negotiating ploy? We're gonna play you less moving forward than we did, so we're gonna pay you less. Is that what Sean Payton's doing here? I mean, I suppose you could look at it and say there's a football reason, right? You don't want to burn out, Nick Bonitto. You don't want to further risk injury like you have other pass rushers. But the guy's in the middle of a contract extension negotiation, and you're saying that we need to play him less. I think it was just him trying to deflect and not get into contract negotiations and what the holdup might be. But what is the holdup? I mean, this is the Broncos have fallen in. Well, not fallen. Let me give them a little bit of credit. They have created the dream scenario of any NFL team. You have a quarterback that is playing for you right now, that has been effective for you, that you don't have to pay anything to. Well, in terms of comparing to other quarterbacks, right? You're not paying Bo Nix anything. He's on a rookie deal, and he's on a rookie deal for 4 more years. They'll pick up his 5th-year option. So Bo Nix was able to lead the Denver Broncos to the playoffs as a rookie, and now you get 4 more years before you got to pay the guy? This is what every NFL team wishes they could be able to do. And everyone always says, oh, that's the recipe. Well, it's not a recipe because no one ever does it. Patrick Mahomes wins Super Bowls. Tom Brady wins Super Bowls. Jalen Hurts just won a Super Bowl. He's highly compensated. It would be nice if you could win a Super Bowl with a quarterback on their rookie deal. It doesn't happen that much. But there are layers beneath that, right? You could be a playoff team with a quarterback on a rookie deal. You could be a division winner. You could advance to the AFC Championship. Or in Jaden Daniels' case, the NFC Championship. You have a chance to stack your roster. You don't have to sacrifice anything. And don't tell me about dead cap, because when Nick Bonitto's extension kicks in next year, or when the dead cap's not going to be an issue. We're seeing the salary cap's only going to go up. It went up 10%. If you keep projecting adding 10% to the salary cap, it's going to be $500 million by the end of the decade. But forget that stuff. You have a rookie quarterback. You can afford to pay anyone you want. And the Broncos have shown even with dead cap, you could still sign pretty much anyone you want. Who's the guy that the Broncos wanted to sign but couldn't because they're dead cap? I don't know that they missed out on one free agent, one extension candidate with this dead cap money. And it's coming off the books. And Bo Nix doesn't have to be paid for 4 years. If I had to theorize what the holdup is, the way that teams look at the cap is not a dollar amount towards it. It's a percentage. Right? And even though the cap keeps going up and up and up, in some of these extensions that get signed, especially by the quarterbacks, we clutch our pearls collectively when they get signed, but then we realize that in the grand scheme of things, where the cap's going, it's not that high of a number, but it's the percentage, and it's the percentage that your quarterback takes up, but also other top players. So I think maybe the negotiation here is George Payton trying to ensure that Nick Bonitto all of a sudden doesn't take up a larger percentage of the cap than they would like him to. It's more about that than dollars. And you see the way that pass rushers are getting paid. And teams have no issue with it. Unless you're the Bengals. Everybody else just blindly hands. The Steelers thing with TJ Watt's going to get done. Like, I have zero doubt that TJ Watt will be on the field against the Jets week 1. It's silly. They're going to pay him. Because you pay pass rushers in this league. You pay quarterbacks, you pay pass rushers. And now it seems like the primary weapon, whether it's a tight end or a wide receiver, is now the third position that you pay above maybe a tackle. Used to be like tackle, and it's still important. But I think you see teams moving. We want to pay our quarterback, but we also want to pay the guy that he loves throwing to the most, and they're productive together. That player has yet to emerge for the Denver Broncos. So even more of a reason why you got no one else to pay. You got nothing else to do but to sign Nick Bonitto. But if the J.K. Dobbins thing taught us anything, it's something could be about done, and the timing in which they're going to announce it is what has to be agreed upon. Or maybe there's a T that has to be crossed or an I that has to be dotted. I don't foresee any way that Nick Bonitto isn't a Bronco long-term. And you look at Bo Nix, Pat Surtain, and Nick Bonitto. That's really the core of this Broncos team. That's what the Broncos have yet to fully establish, right? All the successful teams have a core of players. Broncos haven't had that. Now it's starting to crystallize a little bit. And it's Nix, obviously. It's Surtain, of course. And I think Nick Bonitto. Maybe a Garrett Bowles you would throw into that mix as being a core member of the Denver Broncos. A lot of the other stuff is fungible, right? Either to be determined or someone that's trending in that direction may not be around long term. Nick Bonitto is going to be. So there's no need for Bronco fans to panic, but it is a little bit curious given the amount of work that has already gotten done and the fact that they don't have to do much cap gymnastics in the future because Bo Nix doesn't get paid for a while and the dead cap is coming off of the books. Why this isn't done already seems like an easy piece of business. Probably I'm oversimplifying it, but Nick Bonitto, that's the next thing to do. get that done. And then we'll talk about Cortland Sutton and some of these other players. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, college athletics entering a brave new world with the House settlement. Jay Paterno, who knows college athletics as well as anyone, will give his insight next on Extra Sports 1300. We are about to enter a brave new world of college sports, but one that comes after the last brave new world with NIL and the transfer portal, with the House settlement and teams having basically till the end of the month to decide the future of their respective programs. Joining me now to give his expert insight into what is coming to college athletics is someone that is well-versed in all aspects of college athletics. He's spent nearly 20 years as a college football coach. He is an author. He is a college sports analyst. He is Jay Paterno, and he joins me now. Jay, pleasure to have you. Oh, lost Jay. Had him, and then Jay went away. Well, that's a bummer. He's all queued up and ready to go. See if he dials us back. If you're watching on the stream, you'll see the name of his book. It's very interesting. It's called Blitz, the All-Out Pressure of College Football's New Era. It's a work of fiction. It's a fictional Ohio State coach, but I think, and I'm going to ask him this, I think it allowed him to perhaps tell a little bit more truth when you don't have to, these other or so many books. It doesn't have to be college athletics. It could be on any subject. If there's kind of an ugly side to it or a side that people don't really want to discuss, they're not going to discuss it with you. And if you're interviewing these people to get experts to speak on a subject, there are some things that they may not want to get into. Current college coaches may not want to talk about some of what goes on. So you make a work of fiction, but is almost like historical fiction, right? It's based on real things, but not real people or the characters in the story. We'll see if we can get Jay back here momentarily. This is where having a producer would really help things, because I can't dial up a phone while I am discussing. I don't know what happened with Jay. See if he calls back. Hopefully he does. In the meantime, we're just talking about Nick Bonito and Garrett Bowles. While maybe Sean Payton doesn't want to emote too much about who Nick Bonito is, because they are locked in a contract extension discussion, negotiation. Garrett Bowles is not the one at the negotiating table, so he can let loose with how he feels about Nick Bonito.
The dude has what it takes to be great. I pull him and Coop aside all the time when I say, you guys can be the best in the league. They got high motor. He doesn't give up. It's a special talent to be able to time up a snap count and be able to jump it. It scares tackles, and I get to go up against that every single day. So it's a great battle for me and puts me on my A game every single day. But just what he does day in and day out, he never quits. He's so smooth with it. He can bend, he can rip, he has power. And it's just really cool to see him grow up and become something that, where tackles fear and teams have to prepare for him. And, I'm proud of him and I love him dearly. And I think the sky's the limit for him.
So there was Garrett Bowles talking about Nick Bonito and the player that he is. It sure sounds like a guy that the Broncos want around long term. So we'll get back to that in just a little bit. Do have Jay back on. We had some gremlins in our system, apparently. Jay, pleasure to have you. How are you today?
Great to be on with you guys.
So let me start with the biggest question, and you can take it in any direction you want. Was what happened Friday ultimately good for college athletics?
No. It's kind of, it sets, everybody thinks it settles stuff. It's just going to invite more lawsuits. And that's the problem. Now, I think it's good in that there is some clarity and it's an acceptance of reality. I mean, the reality is, you look at the Big Ten Conference, for example, we make $1.1 billion in our media rights annually. So this is not an extracurricular activity anymore where Johnny's playing for the good of dear old state. This has become big business. You guys have certainly seen that in Colorado up in Boulder, as to what that's meant for that program with Dion there. So, I mean, it's an acknowledgement of where we are. The question is what comes next. Does collective bargaining come next? Do they get employment status? There are Title IX lawsuits already in the chamber coming at this thing too. So it's good in some ways, but it's going to create more chaos.
Well, I think you put it in a great way. Like, there's an acceptance of what college athletics has become, and it's an acceptance that I can't help but feel like if it would have been accepted maybe sooner by the NCAA. Maybe there's fewer headaches. Is that it? How much is the
There's no question.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I'm on the board of trustees at Penn State, so I've been consulting in NAL for 4 or 5 years, and I coached for 22, so I've seen this from every angle, and I've been saying for 4 or 5 years, guys, this is coming, and it was like, no. I said, I'm telling you, it's coming, and nobody wanted to believe it, and everybody just thought Congress will handle it, and if anybody's waiting for Congress to handle anything, I'm not sure, maybe you still think, maybe you think the tooth fairy's still coming. I hate to ruin it for you, but you don't wait on them to get this done. So there's been what really should have happened is 4 years ago when California passed the law, the powers that be should have gotten in the room and say, where do we land this thing? Because the plane had taken off at that point.
Jay Paterno, my guest, college football coach for 22 years. He's an author, analyst, and he's still highly involved in Penn State University, as you just heard, as a trustee, joining me here on Drive Time Sports. So who are going to be the and I hate to phrase it this way, but I don't know any other way, Jay, the biggest losers in all of this? Like who's coming out on the short end of the stick? Because I got to imagine that if you're a college football, big-time college football program, big-time college basketball program, you might be able to navigate this, but there are going to be some people left behind. Who do you think that will be?
Well, I think it's going to hurt everybody. I mean, you look at a place like Penn State, we're in the top 10 nationally in revenues for our athletic department, but we are break even almost every year. We've lost some money in the last 6-7 years. I mean, if you go back 15 years when our expenses were much lower, we were clearing $18-20 million on $100 million in revenue and profits. We're not doing that anymore. We're at $200 and something million and we're breaking even. So now in 2 weeks, we got to come up with $20.5 million in revenue sharing. Where does that come from? Does that come from women's sports? I mean, what do we do there? So we're going to have a problem with it on that end. Now, when you start to take that to schools like St. John's in basketball, or to Gonzaga in basketball, where do they find the revenue sharing money? Because they don't have those big football television contracts that they can tap into. Colorado being in the Big 12 is a different situation than Colorado State because they're in a Power 4 conference. But, even still, everybody's going to have trouble finding this money. Plus, there's a $10 million a year settlement on the previous NIL going back to 2016. So, for some schools, you're looking at $30.5 million a year they got to come up with, or they're going to add to their budget. So there's going to be a lot of people have trouble with this, and you're going to have schools. You look at a school like Davidson down in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Steph Curry played. What are they going to do? What is the Atlantic 10 basketball conference going to do? What's the Big East basketball conference going to do? It's going to be a challenge for all of them. And I think that's unfortunate because the entire system is better when we have those schools involved. And, if we had a fair revenue sharing among conferences, we could get some of these schools like USC and UCLA back into a Pac-12 conference rather than in the Big Ten. But the money's just too big in the Big Ten.
Jay Paterno, my guest. Does private equity have to be a part of the conversation moving forward?
Oh, I think it's going to be. I mean, there was a report that Penn State had taken private equity money yesterday, which wasn't 100% true. We have outsourced, sold off ticket operations to Elevate. Elevate just took $500 million of private equity. So we didn't take it directly, but it kind of came through them. But I think that's coming. I think, whether people want to be running their own ticket operations, their own multimedia operations, their own concession operations, they'll start to sell some of those things off to other companies, whether it's private equity money or not. And I think, if you look at a place like Penn State, our health system, for example, we have taken on private partnership with Highmark, which is an insurer. So they own 20% of our health operation. So those are things that can be done within college athletics, and may have to be when you start talking about the kind of money people have to put up.
Are we going to see this immediately? like all these things, or is this going to be like a slow drip of sports getting cut and team entities, college athletic programs finding these new different ways for funding? Are we going to see a bunch of it in the next couple of weeks, or is it going to be more of a slow drip, you think, Jay?
I think some people probably have some things lined up, but I think it's going to be more of a, okay, just finally figured out, because it's not just the money. There was the roster size limitation,
right,
where kids had been cut and now they got to be back on. So I think people are going to spend the next couple of weeks trying to figure out exactly what they have, exactly what kind of money can you give to a women's volleyball team at Penn State. We just won the national championship, for example. How much money can we give them in revenue sharing? How much money can we give to other sports? Everybody's going to try and figure this out next couple of weeks. And then I think you're going to see people scrambling like crazy to try to figure out what they do. And as more lawsuits get announced, it's going to put the brakes on some of the things that people want to do. So I think but I think there's no question that the SEC and the Big Ten are driving a move for big time football to kind of break away from all this and create a super conference, whether it's the Power Four plus others. And we'll see how that goes. But right now, the problem, and I say this as a board of trustee member of a Big Ten school, the Big Ten, the SEC are the problems right now. The greed of our conferences versus everybody else is really what's driving so many changes, and some of it in a negative way.
Jay Paterno, my guess. What would your father think of all of this?
Well, the one thing about my dad is 4 years ago, he would have said, well, let's figure this out now instead of waiting for events to overtake
100%.
us, which is what has happened. They in the early 80s, Chuck Nidus, who was at Colorado for years and was a really visionary guy, he was AD there and he was commissioner of the Big 10 or the Big 12. When they deregulated all the television rights, Chuck Nidus and my dad were among a group of people that got together and put together what was then called the College Football Association TV package that got money for everybody so that it kind of balanced everything out, and then everybody could kind of stay where they were. And then that started to break apart in the late 80s, and Penn State joined the Big Ten in 89 and then didn't start playing until 93. But that generation of leaders would have gone and said, okay, let's take the bull by the horns and let's try and figure out where we land this thing rather than waiting for things to happen. And I think the reality is this, there's an old joke about a woman goes into the priest. I think this is where athletics is at, finally acknowledging it. A woman goes in the priest and says, "Bless me, Father, for I've sinned. I cheated on my husband with someone for $100,000." And the priest said, "Would you have done it for $10,000?" And she says, "What kind of person do you think I am?" And he says, "Well, we've already established what kind of person you are. Now we're just trying the parameters of what you will do for how much." And that's where college athletics is right now. We are in that game now. And the question is whether or not we've got to acknowledge it, and then we've got to adjust accordingly. And I think collective bargaining has to be part of this. As much as I hate to say it, and I'm old school, but until you have contracts for guys that keep them places that protect both the player and the school, I think this thing's still up in the air.
Last thing before I let you go, Jay, I appreciate you. I've stretched out a little bit longer because of the issues and because I could talk to you for hours about that. I'm just endlessly fascinated with this. Maybe it's a morbid curiosity as much as anything else about the future of college athletics. But let me ask you about the book he wrote, Blitz, the All-Out Pressure of College Football's New Era. I said something while we were getting reconnected. And I said, I appreciated that you this is a work of fiction, but I almost wonder if the reason you went that route was because if you wouldn't be able to get any college football coach or anybody to speak on the record about what's going on. I almost feel like maybe it gave you a little bit more freedom to really tell it how it is in a very entertaining way in a work of fiction. Tell me a little bit about the book.
You have hit the nail exactly on the head. As I started to write this, the question is, do you go fiction or nonfiction? If you go nonfiction, now lawyers are sitting with you writing it, basically saying, don't say this. if you go, so I base the stories in here are real. The stories you're going to read are happening at different schools around the country. I just assigned them places. And I set it at Ohio State because I did not want to set it at Penn State. I wanted to set it at Ohio State because I spent 17, 18 years recruiting the state. I have great familiarity with that program because I've known Urban Meyer for years. So I set it at Ohio State. And the stories you're going to see, whether it's the way some of these collectives are run, whether it is the mental health issues that players are dealing with now because the family is saying, you got to transfer and go to another school because you can get more money. But I love it here. It doesn't matter. We need to, or all these things that are happening that people aren't realizing. And there's still corners being cut. And even with this new house settlement, we all had the same rules with 85 scholarships and people showed up with bags of cash. That's still going to happen. People are going to find ways around rules. So a lot of that is in this book. And like you said, I wanted to write the book and had the freedom to tell what is really going on without worrying about, I'm Italian, so I can say this, without worrying about when I start my car up in the morning, boom, somebody goes, hey, Jay, not that anybody would do that over these stories, but you get the point. And I don't want to lose some friends that I have in the coaching profession still. But it is, if you want to pull the curtain back on what's going on, this book, it does it for you.
Yeah, it absolutely highly recommended. Blitz, the all-out pressure of college football's new era. Just go directly to the source, jvpaterno.com. You can go and you can even get a signed copy of the book by Jay, and you can follow him on X at jpaterno. Jay, you're my guy now, man. I'm going to be hitting you up. I need more of your insight into what's going on, and it's only going to get more difficult to understand as we move along.
Anytime, guys. Appreciate it. And I've spent a lot of times at the top of numerous slopes out there. So love the state of Colorado. Believe me.
All right. Well, we'll talk soon, Jay. Be well. Really appreciate the insight.
Take care.
You too. That's Jay Paterno, longtime college football coach. Obviously, coached under his father for part of his career. Still a trustee at Penn State. The most striking thing to me is him saying that Penn State's athletic program, we think of Penn State's athletic program, they're well-to-do, right? They were one win away from the college football national championship. He mentioned that they have a national championship winning women's volleyball team. I mean, they're in the Big Ten. They're in the big time. They broke even. They broke even before the house settlement. This is going to get really messy. And the one thing that talking to Jay there reinforces my belief, you are going to see a lot of Olympic sports get cut from the Division I slate. You're going to see the number of schools that swim, track, wrestling. I mean, Title IX will come into play, obviously, but you're going to see cuts to the Olympic sports in order to compensate because they're adding another expense, $20.5 million, and they got to back pay. And they got to back pay former athletes as part of the settlement. Wow. We'll have Jay back on for sure. And check out the book, Blitz. Very good. And I'm not a fiction guy. I'm more of a nonfiction guy, but I read it and I was like, I know why he's doing it this way. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we'll hit the 3 stories that are driving the show. Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you on this Wednesday, whether you are listening on the Extra Sports 1300 app or any other way that you can consume the show on a daily basis. But I highly recommend the app. Sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. Superior audio quality. The latest Colorado sports news right there on the app. And our social media feeds as well, which you can use to jump off to watch the show on said social media platforms. Really one-stop shop. Check it out. It's free after all. 719-247-1313 is the text and the phone line. Funny how technology works. You could do either of those things, or you can find me on X at Gingerly Tweets. Perhaps you have an opinion about one of these three stories that are driving the show. All right, we start by the NHL voters hailing Kale again.
McKinnon with 14. Now Cale Makar sees an opening. Makar cuts to the middle. Makar! He scores! Oh! Hail Cale!
Altitude Sports Radio on the call, obviously. Cale Makar takes home his second Norris trophy. And I could have sworn he had already won two. And I know what I was thinking of. I was thinking of the year where Adam Fox just beat him out and saying he should have won that year. But this is his second Norris trophy. He wins it by the largest margin of first place votes we have seen since they expanded the voter base. Mark Giordano back in 2019, got to grab my notes here, once took home 165 out of, at the time, 171 first place votes. There are more first place votes up for grabs. But since that year, the voting has expanded, and this is the widest margin of victory that any defenseman has had. 176 first place votes. The next closest vote getter was Zach Werenski of Columbus, who got 13 first place votes. And you know how I roll. That's all I care about. First place votes. I don't care who's fifth on a ballot. I don't care who gets third place votes. I only care about first place votes. And Cale Makar got a whole lot of them. But this just reinforces that Cale Makar is the standard to which all other defensemen in today's NHL are measured. The guy has been a finalist for the Norris Trophy every year except the year he won Rookie of the Year. He's won it twice. That puts him with Larry Robinson, Brian Leach, and Duncan Keith. That's the list of two-time Norris Trophy winners. Other guys could pop up, a Quinn Hughes, an Adam Fox. Quinn Hughes is just getting started. We'll see how much he sticks around. But Adam Fox, it was like one and done. Like he won it that one year and he wasn't to be heard from again in the Norris Trophy. You look, it's kind of like the best player in the world conversation that we have in any sport. It's not a one-year thing. You got to take a longer-term view. Nikola Jokic is the best in the world right now because over the span of about the last 5 years, he has 3 MVPs, an NBA Finals MVP, and a World's Championship. In addition to all the numbers he's put up. It's not a one-year thing. Cale Makar is the best defenseman on planet Earth currently. That's what, not just this Norris Trophy, but the fact that he continues to be the given. He's the constant. Well, we got Cale Makar. Who are the other two finalists going to be? So now you look on a day like this at the bigger conversation. All time, what is Cale Makar? Well, Cale Makar's falling off the pace. He won the Norris Trophy 3 years into his career. And you kind of thought that he was just going to keep winning them, or at least he'd win more than 0 up until this year after that. And you were talking about Bobby Orr's 8 Norris trophies. Well, now he's, despite being a finalist every single year, he's falling off the pace a little bit. And I think there are a couple reasons for that. We are oversaturated when it comes to the athletes that we talk about. And I'm part of it. I'm a cog in the big machine. Right? We talk about athletes with the 24-hour sports news cycle, all the different outlets, social media. People are inundated with the best players. And that leads to the voter fatigue that we see. We saw it with Nikola Jokic in the MVP. We see it with Cale Makar. We saw it with LeBron James. We've seen it with Tom Brady. We've seen it with Patrick Mahomes. Perhaps in some ways, voter fatigue cost Lamar Jackson the MVP this year. I think some people blame it on voter fatigue, but it's because we're so inundated, we get a little bit tired of the same story over and over again. So we look for someone else to give it to. Not all the time. There are a lot of very worthy winners of awards, but voter fatigue is a thing, and it seems to be coming to the forefront more and more. So I don't know if Cale Makar is going to catch Bobby Orr in scoring or in Norris trophies, but I continue to contend that Cale Makar, while he is one of a crop of incredibly skilled offensive-minded defensemen, he's not the only one that does what he does, but he is the closest thing in a player that we have had to Bobby Orr since Bobby Orr, and I continue to believe that. One day we'll have the actual debate because Cale Makar's career will almost or completely be done, and we'll see where he lands in terms of Stanley Cups, Norris trophies, points, all of that kind of stuff. But if you're looking for somebody who is as close to a clone of Bobby Orr as you're going to find in today's NHL, it's Cale Makar. And in terms of his peers, he remains above all of them. Every year he's a finalist. He's won twice. He is the standard when it comes to defensemen in today's NHL. Now to a player that hopes one day, or certainly the Broncos hope one day, will be the standard when it comes to pass rushers. Here's story number 2.
Listen, he's playing at a high level. We have to be careful of his snap count. If you went back and did any homework and you saw, man, he's at a pitch count that's borderline too high. And we got to be smart about that.
Why did I play that in regards to Nick Bonito's contract extension that he has yet to receive, by the way? Because that's the answer Sean Payton gave to a question about Nick Bonito's extension. I don't know if it's a ploy. We're going to play him less, so he's going to get paid less. I don't know. I mean, what he's saying may be an actual thing that the Broncos are thinking about, but it doesn't have a lot to do with why his extension is not done yet. It seems like a pretty easy thing to do. You don't have to pay your quarterback. That opens up a lot of possibilities. In fact, the only other guy on the defensive side of the football that you're like, the Broncos absolutely have to lock him up. He's already locked up. It's Pat Surtain. So who knows what's going on behind the scenes? I don't think there is any way that Nick Bonito is not a Bronco long-term. He has become a core member of this Broncos team. It's him, it's Surtain, it's Bo Nix, and I said this earlier, I think probably Garrett Bowles is in that mix as kind of the face of that offensive line. Nick Bonito is going to be in Denver long-term, but we're getting a little antsy about it because we see other pass rushers holding out, and we're like, we're not heading for this kind of a thing, are we? I can't imagine that we are. But it is somewhat incumbent on the Denver Broncos to get this done, and there's very little reason why they wouldn't. So these things take time, I suppose, is maybe the best answer to why Nick Bonito is not signed to a contract extension. Now, someone that has already signed on the dotted line is J.K. Dobbins, and here's Sean Payton again admonishing us for the way we talk about his football team.
No, don't start counting. I've heard you guys counting, and it's like, don't count because half you'll be wrong. Let's just see what they do.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking forward to see how they play, and they're going to get opportunities. I said it earlier, much earlier. I said, look, Audrich's going to get opportunities. All right, we've seen Jaleel, but don't try to figure out the club right now. It's way too early. You can go ahead and try, but
you came.
Sean Payton coming to the realization that we are satisfying our urge to talk about quarterback competitions through his running back room. For a very long time, the biggest storyline in any lead up to a Broncos season was who is going to be the quarterback. That is not a thing anymore. Everybody's on board with Bo Nix. There's no competition. There's very little to really nitpick at this point. Had not a Jaden Daniels rookie season, but under any other circumstances, a pretty dang good rookie season. But we want that. We want to keep an eye on things and day to day have something to kind of roll along with. If you look at the Denver Broncos, like a lot is settled with this football team. That's not. And we are going to put the same energy towards this Broncos running back competition, if Sean Payton will not want to call it that, but we'll call it that we did Teddy Bridgewater versus Drew Lock and Paxton Lynch versus Trevor Siemian. We're going to do it because nothing is settled in that room. Nothing. In the wide receiver room, you have Cortland Sutton. He's your number one guy. You saw what Marvin Mims brought last year. He's not in competition with anybody. He has his own unique role. And it's just a bunch of these young guys, Brian and Franklin and Vele, who are kind of battling it out for the scraps. But in the running back room, we don't know a starter. We don't know who's going to end up with the most carries by the end of the year. Like, that thing is wide open, and Sean Payton knows it. He just gets annoyed by the way that media is, even though we welcomed him into our open arms when he was gone from New Orleans. He became a media member. You think he'd be a little bit more, he's certainly media savvy, having been on the other side, but you think he'd be a little bit nicer to us, knowing that this is what we do in June. But there's something real behind it. Like so many of the Broncos quarterback competitions, like the fate of the football team is riding on this. This is not a tiny thing that Sean Payton's trying to figure out. Arguably the biggest weakness of this football team last year was their inability to run the football. So a lot of people are looking at the Broncos run game as kind of the way that they take the next step. But there are huge question marks. You have a second-year player, a rookie, and now J.K. Dobbins. We know it's going to be by a bit of a committee. We know that's the way Sean Payton wants to do it. But who's going to be the guy in the red zone? Who's going to be the guy they go to on first down on a crucial drive to get it off to a good start so Bo Nix doesn't have to chase things and be in a 3rd and 8? Like, who emerges from this? Who curries the most favor with Sean Payton? It matters. It's a significant role on this football team. So, yeah, right now it's probably too early to make any grand proclamations, but there is a legitimate curiosity surrounding how all of these running backs are going to fit together. Call it a competition if you want or don't, but Sean Payton's got to figure out when he needs a guy to run the ball and pick up some yards, who's it going to be? Because all of these guys have big-time question marks around them. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. Coming up next, what James Dolan and a 12-year-old, I think I was 12, a 6th grade Ryan Kaufman have in common. An illuminating conversation next. This Saturday night, Switchbacks FC finally back at Widener Field taking on Oakland Roots. Bring your dad, or if you're a dad, bring your kid, or your significant other, or your buddy. I have a pair of tickets to Saturday night's match. Gates open at 6. Be there then because first 2,000 fans through the gates will get a Switchbacks canvas bag. And then fireworks after. Be the 13th texter to text Switchbacks and your name to 719-247-1313. That's Switchbacks and your name. 13th texter will get a pair of tickets to see the Switchbacks go up against Oakland Roots on Saturday night. That's how I'm spending my Saturday before Father's Day, so I highly recommend. Couple of texts I want to get into before talk about as the Knicks world turns. Eric says, so one good year gets you a top-end contract extension. No. One, Nick Benito, because he wasn't a first-round pick, there's no fifth-year option. So the Broncos got to pay him now. Or risk having to franchise tag him, and that franchise tag is going to be massive because he's a pass rusher. So the timing of it, he has to be paid now. Now, as the top-end extension, I said this yesterday, I think the Broncos would like TJ Watt to sign his deal. But for now, it's Myles Garrett. And they can go to Nick Benito, and they say, as much as we love you, you're not that guy. Like, that's the thing. There's a difference between Nick Benito getting paid, which he deserves to get paid. The timing dictates that it is his turn to get paid. And also understanding that Nick Benito has a little ways to go before we could talk about him in the same breath as a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt, if we ever do. And maybe that's part of the reason why these set of circumstances on why it's taking so long. They have to negotiate with him earlier because he's not a first-round pick. He plays a premium position that there are some pretty hefty contracts that have been handed out, and they can't pay Nick Benito that. They shouldn't pay Nick Benito that. But what Nick Benito is, we have this debate when it comes to extensions. Are you rewarding a guy for what they've done or what you think they'll be? With Nick Benito, it's you're paying him based on what you think he's going to be. He popped this year with 13 and a half sacks. Maybe it was a negotiating ploy for Sean Payton to say, I'm not going to put him on the field as much. Got to worry about his pitch count. I don't think anybody in their right mind is saying Nick Benito is one of the 3 or 4 best pass rushers in the NFL. But the Broncos got to pay him now. He plays one of the most important positions in football. But what you have to calculate is what you're betting on for the future. So it's actually not because he had one good year. It's actually what they think he'll end up doing in the future and why they'll actually, if Nick Benito continues to progress and continues to make an impact, and the Broncos sign him now, he's going to be a bargain. He's going to be a bargain if he keeps progressing. Because they're going to be able to say exactly what you're saying, Eric. You have 1 year. We like you, but this is what we think the fair number is. And I don't think he's going to even come close to Myles Garrett money. But he needs to get paid. Should get paid. And the Broncos don't have anyone else that's sitting there at the negotiating table that needs to be paid more than that guy. So Nick Benito, if you're really thinking about it, Nick Benito has really played himself into an amazing position. Because if he doesn't have the season he has last year, we're not having this conversation. Because he was taken in the second round, he's due for an extension earlier And he's on a team that not only has a rookie quarterback or a quarterback on a rookie deal, but the only other player, they got everyone locked up that they want to lock up. There's nobody else waiting in line. You could argue Zach Allen, but I continue to contend that I don't think they signed Zach Allen to a top of market extension. I don't. If he wants to take a hometown discount, if you will, then sure, they'd like to have him back. I don't think Zach Allen is as important to get signed as Nick Bonito. It's a unique circumstance, for sure. This from the 719 regarding Cale Makar. Come on, Kaufman. Makar is a worthy Norris winner, but is he a plus 124, plus 80? I get it. It's the year 2025, and nobody knows who Bobby Orr is. He didn't belong in the NHL, but there wasn't a better league for him to play in. Few know that Orr played tough defense and never got caught up ice. Every time I say Cale Makar and Bobby Orr in the same sentence, people think I'm saying Cale Makar is better than Bobby Orr. Now, I have left open the possibility in the past that one day he could, but I'm not saying that now. Nobody's saying that right now. What I am saying is when you watch Bobby Orr, whether you were fortunate enough to watch him live or you go back and watch video of Bobby Orr, Cale Makar is the closest thing to that we have had, which is a different. I mean, Bobby Orr also just so happens to be the greatest defenseman of all time, but there are other defensemen that are between Cale Makar and Bobby Orr on the all-time list. The point I'm making is that when you watch Cale Makar, he doesn't play the game like Nicholas Lidstrom does. Right? He plays the game like Bobby Orr, and I don't think Cale Makar is a better defensive defenseman than Bobby Orr is, but I also don't think that Cale Makar gets quite as much credit when he needs to be a good defender. He has Devon Taves, which frees him up to do a lot of offensive-minded stuff. If he were forced to play defense more, I think that people would see that Cale Makar is actually quite a capable defensive hockey player. But that's not what they ask him to do because Devon Taves is like, I'm good, bro. You go. I got the blue line locked down. You go score goals. The closest thing to Bobby Orr in terms of style, in terms of the way they play the game, since Bobby Orr is Cale Makar. And there is no debate that right now Cale Makar is the best defenseman currently in the NHL. Now, with that all being sorted out, James Dolan, or by extension the New York Knicks, are reminding me a lot of myself when I was in sixth grade. When I was in sixth grade, I decided it was time for me to start dating. So I then proceeded to perhaps ask out every girl in my sixth grade class. I won't say last names to protect the innocent, but Samantha, Ryan, how weird would that have been? Another Ryan. That was a girl, but Samantha, Ryan, Siri, Kylie, Ashley, Aaron, I think I asked out the entire sixth grade in my school, trying to find perhaps my first real girlfriend. And because I had to cycle through all of them, you know that I was rebuffed with extreme prejudice. I know it's hard to believe. You hear me on a daily basis. Maybe you see me and you're like, how in the world was that guy not having girls lining up around the block? But I don't know. They just weren't ready. They weren't ready for me. And now they're all married. So I really, their loss. But what's going on with the New York Knicks right now is kind of like that. Because in the last 24 hours, reportedly the Knicks have asked the Rockets about Ime Udoka, and the Rockets said kick rocks. Get Rockets, kick rocks. They have gone to the Mavericks about Jason Kidd, and the Mavericks have said get lost. They're denying their request. Even if Jason Kidd has interest, too bad. We're not letting you talk to him. The Knicks went to the Minnesota Timberwolves and said, could we talk to Chris Finch? And I hope it was Tim Connolly, told them, not if you were the last NBA team on earth. And now today, this is how bad it's getting. And I won't identify what the comp would be for sixth grade Ryan Kaufman, because I don't want to, she's told me no as well. So who am I to judge? But now Shams Charania is reporting that even the New York Knicks have been denied their request to speak with their employed head coach, Quinn Snyder. Tell me the last time anyone looked at Quinn Snyder as a valuable commodity. This is where they're at. They're getting rebuffed by the Hawks about Quinn Snyder. The Hawks haven't accomplished anything. You look at the Rockets, they might be on the verge of going to a NBA final next year. The Mavericks have been to an NBA finals. The Wolves are trying to get there. These are teams with either recent pedigree or have big things planned for the upcoming year. They even went to Atlanta, and Atlanta's like, no, we're not helping you. So where are the Knicks going to go? I got to imagine Michael Malone is sitting there in his living room going, yeah, all roads lead to me. Wait, what is it that Thanos says when Iron Man and Captain America and Thor confront him on the battlefield? It's led you back to me. That's Michael Malone right now. I was initially the name, and then you looked everywhere else, and now guess where you're back? Now, the other name is Johnny Bryant. He's an assistant with the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. So you go from Tibbs to an assistant on the Cavs staff. You're going to be able to sell that to Knicks fans. But the NBA, kudos to the rest of the NBA, because they have done the thing that I said they should do. And now that I'm thinking about it, maybe all the girls in my sixth grade class got together and coerced against me. Collusion to say, Ryan's about to ask all of you out. Nobody say yes to him. We want to give him a permanent, what's the word I'm looking for? A permanent lack of confidence. We want to scar him for life, so nobody say yes to him. The guy just wants to take a walk with one of us. We're all going to deny him. But that's what the NBA is doing, and I applaud it. Nobody help out the Knicks. You made a mistake, and you should have to live with it. You should have to look to the unemployed coaches, the assistant coaches. You shouldn't get to just roll up to Dallas and say, give us Jason Kidd. You shouldn't be able to go. I mean, think of the stones to be able to roll up to the Minnesota Timberwolves and say, hey, can we talk to Chris Finch? No, we're trying to win a championship here. It's almost like the Knicks made this decision in a rash way and didn't really have it all the way thought through on what they would do once Tibbs was fired. So no Quinn Snyder, no Jason Kidd, no Chris Finch, no Ime Udoka. It's hilarious. On Shams' timeline, He's just saying, add this team to the mix and add this team to the mix. I expect before tip-off tonight for Shams to report that the Oklahoma City Thunder before the game told the Knicks, no, you may not speak to Mark Daigneault. But I am hearing that if the Pacers lose, that maybe the Knicks will set their sights a little lower and try to get Rick Carlisle. 719-24-7. 13-13. Take one last break, come back and wrap up the show after this. Treat your dad to a $5,000 basement barbecue, backyard upgrade, or whatever else is on his list. Do we get lists for Father's Day? Well, yeah, we all have a list in our head of things we would like to get and what $5,000 couldn't buy you. Pop gets to pick. If you head to our website, extrasports1300.com, enter the national contest for a chance at $5,000 for your top pop, sponsored locally by Bullseye Plumbing, Heating, and Air. You've scored a bullseye, the best you can get. Congrats to Eric, who won the pair of tickets to see the Switchbacks take on Oakland on Saturday. My kids are going to be very upset with me that I was forgetting. I've been kind of a mess today. I don't know how you put up with me today, honestly. Like, I've been all over the place. But I remember, I didn't remember. I looked it up. You couldn't live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me. That's Michael Malone right now with the Knicks coaching search. You went out, you tried it, you tried to get Jason Kidd, Chris Finch, even Quinn Snyder of all people. All those teams told you no, you failed. Give me the job. That's what the line was. You couldn't live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me. Because they went in a time machine to try and undo what he did. And then it just turned out that Thanos was waiting for them and got the jump on him. No, spoiler alert, I know. By the way, last better than meh Marvel movie. The last better than meh Marvel movie. I just saw, what was the new one? So there's the Captain America one, and what's the one I just saw? Man, my brain is not functioning. But I saw the new one, and I was like, yeah, just not the same. Just not the same after that anymore. We'll see if Fantastic Four is any good. Oh, the Thunderbolts. Yeah, I walked out of the theater and I was like, okay, all right. Glad I got to spend some time with my kids. Like, that's how I feel about Marvel movies now. And I don't think I've aged out of Marvel movies. I really don't. I think it's after Endgame. Like, that was it. And they just should have stopped. The world would be no worse off if Marvel just stopped making movies after Endgame. But I don't think I'm aging out. Like, I like the new Batman movie, so I'm still about the superhero movies. I'll see Superman coming up next month. I just think it's that they can't even come close anymore. But I look at it now as just my kids really want to see them, and they still love them as much. Every single one is a 10 out of 10 would recommend. It's what my oldest says. So for them to enjoy it and for me to get to spend time with them, that's before I couldn't care less if they came with me. I'm going to go see the latest Marvel movie. If the kids are coming with, great, but hurry up and get in the car. Now it's like they're kind of dragging me to go see them. Anyway. We have, what was the other thing I was going to do? How about the U.S. men's national team? You know, we have a World Cup that we're hosting in a year, right? Like, Switzerland? Really? You're going to get curb stomped by Switzerland? Their whole persona is They don't like conflict. Well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it was good because there was no conflict last night for the U.S. men's national team. Switzerland just rolled right over them. We're a year away from the World Cup. We're hosting. We're gonna do no better than Qatar did when they hosted. People are going to be looking at the United States of America and saying they got the auto bid because they're hosting. Good gravy. And U.S. men's soccer is dealing with a little bit of the Caitlin Clark WNBA stuff. Have you noticed this? Like the old heads like Clint Dempsey and Landon Donovan are like trashing the U.S. men's national team. And the U.S. men's national team has to clap back at the older players, saying we don't listen to that stuff. And then Christian Pulisic is kind of caught in the middle, which, by the way, he's not playing, didn't play last night. He's somewhere. He's kind of caught in the middle because he played with the older guys. He's playing with the younger guys. It's Pochettino does not have it figured out yet. I just wanted to update you. So for those of you who don't follow soccer a lot, but are planning on rooting like crazy for the United States when we host the World Cup, which is obviously what you were allowed to do, what you should do, it's not going well. We're a year out. And they still stink. So updated you on that. Game 3 tonight. What are we going to get? We're going to get a raucous crowd at Gamebridge in Indianapolis. I said this after Game 2. That could have been Oklahoma City putting their foot down and saying, we messed up in Game 1. We didn't learn our lesson from the Nuggets series. We let a team hang around. They beat us. Fair play to them. Now we're putting our foot down and we're taking this thing. OKC in 5, which was my prediction at the beginning of the series, is not out of the realm of possibility, even though Indiana took Game 1. Tonight is going to tell us everything. If this is really going to be a series, Indiana wins tonight. I have not wavered in my belief that OKC wins the series, but I've always just wondered how good this series is going to be. How long is it going to go? If Indiana wins tonight, then yeah, we're going to have a longer series, which is great because the Nuggets still haven't figured out who their general manager is. So they need more time. Between the Nick Bonito extension and Nuggets signing a GM and the U.S. getting ready to host the World Cup, everybody just needs more time. But if OKC goes into Gamebridge tonight and wins this game, yep, we'll be done. We're done here. Now it's just a coronation more than it is a basketball series. So it'll be an interesting one tonight in Indianapolis. And then tomorrow night, of course, we got Game 4. Edmonton, like Indiana, got to show something. Didn't do well in the previous game. Is Edmonton really in this thing? Or did they melt down completely? And who will be the starting goaltender, by the way? Chris Knobloch. Mum is the word. He's been asked multiple times. Still has not said whether it be Stuart Skinner or Pickard. To me, you go back to Stuart Skinner. It's one game. It would very much reinforce the idea that the Oilers just didn't melt down in Game 3 like they melted down for the series. If Knobloch is going to go back to Pickard because of that one game, then that's a panic move. And I know Pickard was good for them earlier in the playoffs, but now is not the time. Now is not the time. And I get it. If you don't make a preemptive strike against it and you lose tomorrow night because Skinner is terrible, then you're not coming back. The series is effectively over. But look at what happened in Dallas. Got to be careful. Sometimes you got to stay with the guy. And I think the Oilers have little choice but to stick with Stuart Skinner. But we'll see tomorrow night. Appreciate your patronage today. My thanks to Jay Paterno and Jay Ritchie for being my guests. We got the U.S. Open starting tomorrow, too. A lot to discuss. Enjoy your evening. We'll see you tomorrow at 3.